Hella hockeylooyah. The Nashville Predators finally get their first win of the season. We're going to tell you our one word to describe their 4-0 win over the Boston Bruins, and we're going to tell you what the Predators did that made all the difference on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this, oh my gosh, we are so relieved and happy to be talking hockey episode with a shout out to all of our listeners, especially to our everydayers and our Locked On Predators insiders. We appreciate your support. We love talking Nashville Predators hockey with you. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Emma and I have never been so happy during this regular season to kick off a Locked On Predators episode because the Nashville Predators finally got their first win of the season, a season filled with expectations and a 5-game disappointment streak. We're going to talk today about what the Predators did that made the difference. We're also going to talk about Zachary L'Heureux's NHL debut and share our one words to describe the 4-0 shutout win over Boston. Before we dive into all of that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Emma, oh, thank goodness. You know, we're very excited to record this episode because we get to talk about a win and about a Nashville Predators team that I think you and I thought we would be talking about a little earlier in the season here. Do you want to just offer an explanation? There was no episode yesterday. That was no fault of Emma and mine. The interwebs ate our episode, and we hunted it down and tried to find it and resuscitate it. And even the experts said that it was gone forever. But we just want you to know that we slayed it. It was a banger, and they did everything we said that they should do to get the win. So moving on to today's episode. So how did you feel? How did you feel seeing the Predators get their first win? And what is your one word to describe the 4-0 win over the Boston Bruins?
4-0 win, finally. And
thank you. Yes.
I would say that's probably, as much as I want my one word to be finally, I'll come up with something more intelligent than that. But I think, if I had to really pinpoint it, I would say communication
Yes.
is my one word. And that was something that I noticed it, but then Andrew Brunette brought it up afterwards. He even talked about it before the game too, that it was like, these guys need to talk to each other. And that was kind of what we were seeing. Is it wasn't a lack of skill. It wasn't anything like that. It was just these guys look out of sync. They don't look like they have played together before. And you could see a lot more communication. By no means was it perfect. There were a lot of, little mistakes and things that need to get cleaned up. They almost gave it back to Boston early in the period, in the second and third. But, they hung on, they weathered the storm. And I think communication is a big piece of that.
I thought that was so interesting in the post game, in the conversations that the players had about the game. That was such a huge component of what they talked about as being the difference. So yeah, I think we'll talk some more about that in our second segment. But yeah, that was so interesting to me because I don't know that I had put my finger on it specifically, but they got it right. My one word is expectations, which again, I can do better, but that's where we're at. And when I say expectations, I don't mean like my expectations now are like we're back on track and we're going to the postseason. I mean, this was the expectation I had going into the regular season of what we would see from the Predators. And that's based not just on the roster on paper, but based on what you and I had seen in training camp. this is what I expected. This game was what I had expected to see. And we hadn't seen it in the regular season. We knew that it would take some time to get Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea kind of going, but I expected the rest of the team could carry it until they got up to speed. And we didn't see that until last night's game. And so I was like, okay, this is what we thought we would see from this team.
Yep. Yeah. And I will say that win against Boston, it wasn't just because every once in a while you get some lucky bounces here and there, a win's a win, we'll take what we can get kind of thing. The Predators earned this win over Boston. And it wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't always pretty at times, but they were winning puck battles. They were pushing back on, Boston was giving them a lot of pressure. They were pushing back. Juuse Saros is incredible. I think at one point on NHL.com last night, I think there was like a glitch in the system with listing the 3 stars of the game. And they had Juuse Saros listed twice. And I was like, honestly, Freudian slip. I think it makes sense. He could have been all 3 stars of that game. Yes. No disrespect to Tommy Novak or Ryan O'Reilly or anyone else, but yeah, it was a team effort. It was, it was gritty and it was tough, and it was a little bit, like you said, more what we were expecting from this team this year.
Yes. We always, of course, reach out to our Locked On Predators insiders for their input after a game. And of course, we always want their one word. Chris's one word, encouraging. Yes, we've needed a little bit of that coming along. Another insider said, woohoo, at last. I was like, yeah. When I read at last, I started singing that. Now I'm not going to remember the artist. The old
Etta James.
Etta James. Yeah. I was like, that's the theme of the game. Matt H said, bleep. Everybody can take a step back from the edge. Yes, we can. Dustin said, my one word is the A-team, because I love it when a plan comes together. Said, sorry, I'm an 80s kid and Mr. T was my guy. Absolutely no apologies. 80s kids rock as one. Henry's one word was unlocked as well. And that's a great one word. That's what we saw. It was like, we knew it was there. But when you lose 5 in a row, you begin to say, oh my gosh, is it, can we unlock it? Or is the window for that gone? And I think, we saw in some of the YouTube comments, we've heard in different conversations, people saying this just shows that you can't bank on these veterans. These veterans, aren't going to carry the team. I just personally want to point out, don't ever count out an old Swede, Gus Nyquist. Did you see that goal? I just want to make sure everybody saw that goal.
Beauty. It was a beauty. Also, a lot of you people out there, oh my goodness. The same people who not 24 hours ago were calling for Andrew Brunette to be fired right after being a Jack Adams finalist and leading this team to a 19-game point streak last year, going to the playoffs, all that. Now, apparently, he's the worst coach in Predators history and needs to lose his job tomorrow. And suddenly you all changed your mind after that win. So I'm just going to point that out. Just a reminder, 82 games. It's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games. It is. And, I was listening to Barry Trotz did an interview yesterday afternoon with 102.5, and he was asked about, the whole, like, if things aren't going well, you fire the head coach. And I loved Barry Trotz's answer. He's like, I believe you fixed the problem. And look, y'all, it's not going to happen. Andrew Brunette is not going to lose his job this season. He's not going to lose his job this season, nor should he. Just throwing that out there. So talk about expectations. There's a fat one for you. Emma has talked about communication as one of the big factors that improved this Predators performance. Coming up, we're going to talk about the other things that were better about Nashville on the ice last night against Boston. And we're going to tell you a couple of things we still think need to get better. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you are looking forward to seeing this Predators team play this season, or if you're just looking to make some great fall memories with family and friends, you've got to check out all the great deals available at Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, your favorite music, theater, and comedy. Game Time has this great feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it's going to make getting tickets for your favorite event even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only the best deals and the best seats, so you're not going to waste your time scrolling through thousands of ticket options. Right now, Game Time has great deals on sporting events like the Tennessee Titans and, of course, the Nashville Predators. Game Time also comes with a low price guarantee, and they have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, Emma, we are back finally talking Nashville Predators win, and a lot of things went well for the Predators. And I would say straight eye test. We're not, not looking at advanced stats, not digging into anything. This just looked different than what we've seen in the first 5 games. And I love that you mentioned communication, because it's been hard to sort of nail down very specifically what it has been that has been off about this team. It's clear they've been off, but I love that you kind of got from this from the post game and stuff, the communication piece. What was it that they were saying about that, and how do you think that changed what we saw last night?
I think that, it was in the post game conversation, but I also had a conversation one-on-one with Mark Delgaizo at Morning Skate, and
Locked on Mark Delgaizo right here.
yes, and he talked about his partnership with Luke Schenn on the third D pairing, and talked about, and I think this can be applied to the rest of the team as well, that I'm like, how do you guys know it when, a game is moving so fast, and you need to, like, how do you know when it's working, like with you and your defensive partner, or with forwards on a forward line? Like, how do you know when it's working? How do you know when it's clicking? What makes a partnership successful like that, or a line combination successful? And that was the first thing he said. This was before the game was even played last night. He said, you got to talk to each other. And he said, Luke Schenn is talking all the time, and that's what makes him a good partner for me. And so I think that that's important. I was looking for that. You did see guys talking a lot, and you have to remember, like, maybe to the end of last season, that Predators team was so comfortable playing with each other, and they just kind of had that, shared brain. They always knew where the other guy was going to be at all times. And, they kind of got comfortable with that. Well, now you can't really do that, because you have these new pieces, and they're not just new pieces. I mean, these are new pieces that you build a system around. And so you have to make sure that they are up to speed. And so it just led to a lot of, I think, sloppiness, but it, like you said, you couldn't really put your finger on it, because I was watching, the first 4 or 5 games and thinking, okay, they look sloppy, but not in a lazy way. It wasn't that they weren't trying. It was almost like they were trying too hard. And it was like they're missing shots wide. They're ringing them off the post. They're, overpassing to each other. They're overshooting each other. And it was just like, what is going on? And you then kind of get that insight, and it's like, oh, because they're not talking to each other. And you have to kind of go back to basics a little bit, where, again, they probably got to the point where they were comfortable enough where they didn't need to talk as much last year. Now they kind of need to simplify it, go back to basics. Anything that might seem kind of obvious may not be obvious to these newer guys, and with these new combinations. And so you have to go back to basics, talk to each other, communicate with each other. So I think we saw that. And I think that, it was evident that, because that's how you build trust within a team as well. Not to say that they didn't trust each other before, but I think that you've got to start from the beginning. And it's like the Predators were trying to start where pick up where they left off last year. And
Yes.
they can't really do that. And so they need to kind of start from the beginning. And I think last night was a really good reset for them. They won one. That's great, but they've dug themselves in a little bit of a hole here to start the season. So now
Mhm.
they got to win several more.
Yes. I do think it matters a little bit that they won this one against Boston, because I don't know that we would feel, and I mean no disrespect about this, but if they got their first win against Chicago or Columbus, and again, I mean no disrespect about that, but you know Boston is going to be a playoff team, and you almost needed Nashville to prove to themselves that we can beat a potential playoff team if we do things right. And so I do think it matters that the first win came against Boston. Another thing that I think made a difference, and again, it's kind of hard to nail down how to describe what it was, but it was almost like, and I hate this word because it's not the right word, but effort. Because what we saw before wasn't lack of effort. Like you said, they weren't lazy, but everybody was contributing. Henry, one of our insiders, we always, we ask the insiders for one word. We also say, like, what did you see? Henry said, I saw aggressiveness and determination. There was so much fight in them, and it didn't seem like frustration. That, I think, nails it, because I think what we saw before wasn't lack of effort, but I think what we saw was frustration, that things weren't connecting, that things weren't going well. And last night, you really saw just determined team. There were no passengers last night. There was not a line that was not working, that was not trying to generate something. There was not a player that you said, oh, I don't think they're going to get many shifts in the third period. Like, everybody was working hard and contributing and determined and aggressive. And it looked different and it felt different. The other thing that we just have to talk about, Juuse Saros. We have got to talk about Juuse Saros last night. Another one of our insiders, one word was juice. And I'm like, yes. He said, yes, the team had grit, had luck on a few bounces, and showed more fluidity on offense. But most importantly, the juice was loose. Juuse Saros, some of those saves last night. And again, we're so used to seeing him oftentimes make those saves that we're like, oh, yeah, that's Juuse Saros. Just what a game last night from Juuse Saros. Damn.
Especially since we're waiting, we're used to Juuse Saros having quote unquote slower starts to
Right.
seasons. And now you can see, like, hey, he is capable of pulling this team into the fight and keeping them in the fight. And that's what we saw from him last night, because especially, I mentioned this before, but at the beginning of the second period and beginning of the third period,
Mhm.
couple of rough shifts from the Predators to start those. They almost, they got a little too loose and let Boston have their chances. And Juuse Saros stopped every single one. And I mean, I think, and I apologize because I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you looked at Natural Stat Trick after the game last night, the expected goals for each team was, I mean, it was like 3 something for Boston and 1 something for Nashville. So I think that speaks, yes, obviously Nashville, finally was producing offensively, but I think it speaks to how critical Juuse Saros was in this game. And I think, I want to talk too about, you mentioned the frustration that they had been feeling before. And I think that that's something that Andrew Brunette had brought up as well at Morning Skate. He talked about, he used himself as an example. He's like, I think this team is getting frustrated. And I know for me personally, when I'm frustrated, I am not the best person. I'm not the best teammate. I think we can all relate. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to be at your best when you're frustrated about something. And I think that was kind of starting to creep in with this group. And so that's something that I think it was critical to see them rebound from that, because every team is going to go through skids. Every team is going to get frustrated. it's not about not getting frustrated, because that would mean that you don't care. I think what is important is that they got frustrated and they pulled themselves out of it. So need to
Huge.
see some more of that moving forward.
And I think it sucks that this has happened at the beginning of the season and they still have a long way to go. Like you said, there's a hole to dig out of now. And you've won one game. That doesn't mean you're going to win another one. You've got to work every game. But maybe some of the lessons they've learned early, even about the mental component of the game, hopefully they will take those with them through the rest of this season. We're going to have to see what happens. They've got a couple games coming up this weekend. There is one play in particular that I want us to talk about in just a minute, Emma. It was probably one of my favorite plays that I have ever seen from a defenseman we lovingly refer to as the Viscount Chihuahua here at the Locked On Predators podcast. So we're going to talk about this amazing play. We're also going to talk about Zachary L'Heureux's NHL debut coming up in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This is the most wonderful time of the year for sports. We've got the World Series in full swing. We've got the NFL underway, NHL Frozen Frenzy last night. Tons of sports to enjoy. And the best place to celebrate all of those sports is with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NFL fans, you can kick off your own season with a big return at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. Your first $5 bet gets you a guaranteed $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. So check out the sports details and this great deal at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. All right. Before we dive into the specifics of this play, I do want to say, just if any of you ever see Alexander Carrier in the wild, please do not tell him that we refer to him as the Viscount Chihuahua.
Please.
There is a good reason why we do. If you go back and you watch our what
superlatives
from last season, if you watch those episodes, there is a very good reason, solid reasoning why that is his nickname. But let's just keep that within the Locked On Predators family. So just that little thing. But let's talk about one of my favorite plays. You want to talk about a team that is all out, that is going all out, that is putting it all out there. This play was the summary of it. And I believe it was a Boston power play, if I'm right. I don't think it was 5-on-5 in the third period. Wide open backdoor shot. Juuse Saros playing out of his mind, but you've got to have defensive support, especially on the penalty kill. And the penalty kill is a more aggressive system. So you've got guys, moving everywhere. And you have, and I think it was Brad Marchand, and I should have written this down, on the back door, wide open. And you see the pass come across and you're like, and there it is. Because there was no way for Saros, probably no way. I don't want to rule Juuse Saros out, but probably no way for Saros to get to it. Literally out of the view of your television screen, y'all, comes Alexander Carrier, like horizontal to the ice, stick outstretched like Superman. And he intercepts and taps that pass away and prevents what I think really had to have been almost a guaranteed goal. Absolutely incredible play. 100% the play you want to see from a team that has to get a win. My favorite part of this whole thing was Juuse Saros's comments post-game. When he was asked about it, he said, I was just happy to see him flying out of nowhere.
And that's like honestly the most elaboration you're gonna get from Juuse Saros in a post-game interview. And I mean, no disrespect that he is he's a man of few words. And that's okay. Less is more. But I think that, yeah, he was like in his, kind of trademark, very quiet, subdued, like, yeah, it was nice to see him flying out of nowhere there. And I have to say though, Alex Carrier, exceptional on the penalty kill, not just in that play, but all night last night. He was everywhere. And I think that was huge. There were a couple penalties there, again, especially early. It looked like, Ryan O'Reilly had, I think the Predators had like maybe 9 seconds of a man advantage when David Pastrnak got that penalty 13 seconds in. Immediately Ryan O'Reilly gets called and he joins him in the box. And so it happens. But I think that there were things like that obviously you don't want to see happen. Alex Carrier, exceptional.
Unreal. He also is crazy about blocking shots.
Yes.
Just crazy. And you've got to have that on the penalty kill. So for me, when I think back to this game, so many things stand out. The offense was much more connected. That's that communication piece you talked about. I think Juuse Saros was, peak Saros form. But defensively, when I think back to this game, the effort, the commitment, that all comes down to what we saw from Alexander Carrier, which was great. Do want to talk about another face that we saw, Zachary L'Heureux. You all know that Emma and I just so impressed with Zachary L'Heureux, especially in training camp. Made his NHL debut last night. We told you probably didn't hear it because we lost the episode, but we told you in yesterday's episode that
we promised.
We're like, the Predators need a spark, not that they needed him to come in and carry everything. Zachary L'Heureux is not a spark. He is lighter fluid. And he came in and he had 1 shot. He had 4 hits. But here is what he kind of does is he just comes in and he does his thing, and his thing generates energy. And what I loved about Zach Laro is what we saw from him is exactly what we saw from him in training camp, what we've seen from him early in Milwaukee. I think they've had 4 games. He's got 3 goals, 5 points. And we also didn't see him try to do more or push too hard or try to be someone he wasn't. Literally came in and played his game, which is exactly what the Predators needed. So what was your takeaway with Zach Laro in his NHL debut yesterday, Emma?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it was huge that a lot of times, especially not only for a new guy coming in, making his debut, but especially in a situation like this, knowing that the team doesn't have a win yet, knowing that you're expected to provide some kind of spark, knowing that you're playing against Brad Marchand, who you have often been compared to in your young career. It's got to be a lot. And, he's definitely a pro about it. We asked him about it beforehand and he said, yeah, I just want to do me. I want to play my game. And he did not look like he was trying too hard. And he didn't look out of place. He looked like he belonged there. I think those you mentioned, he had 4 hits. I think that they were all good and, I would say productive hits, that they were, it wasn't just like, oh, I got to make my presence known and let me just go out and start bashing people. I think it was like, he was really, he understood his job is to hunt pucks, to move guys off of pucks. And that's what he went and did. He wasn't trying to go out and get crazy and score all kinds of, crazy goals. He was just there and he was a good teammate, I thought. And so I was impressed with him. Looking forward to seeing him maybe get a little bit more comfortable and seeing a little bit more from him. But I know that Anne, you have some feelings about his rookie lap last night.
I do. And let me just say this, Zachary L'Heureux is just great. And I know he's got a reputation for being like scrappy and a little on edge and da-da-da-da-da. He is a delightful young man. But Zachary L'Heureux, here's what I'm going to need from you, my friend. I know probably the NHL is not going to fine you for going bucketless on your rookie lap, but put your helmet on, child. Put your helmet on. Look, I come from a family where we have dealt with significant brain injuries. So I have strong, just personal feelings on this. And so I watch. I know who wears the bucket in warmups and who doesn't, Colton Sissons. But I just did not want to see no helmet on Zachary L'Heureux on his rookie lap.
Kid thinks he's Connor Bedard out there going no bucket.
Is
on
that
the
who I
hot
blame?
lap.
Is that who started this nonsense? Connor Bedard?
He did it last year. Although
Oh.
I think if I remember correctly, Bedard, he did the lap with no helmet, but then
Mhm.
he went and put his helmet on for the rest of warmups, which I was like, okay. But L'Heureux did not. Also, new member of the No Bucky Club last night, Jeremy Lauzon. So
What are we doing?
I know.
What are
Well,
we?
it's because you weren't there, Anne. It's because you weren't
yeah,
there to keep them in check. You had other much more important business to tend to. But
I know, but I still like Jonathan Marchessault. I am so happy you're here. Put a helmet on. Like, put your helmet on in warmups. Like, welcome.
Ryan O'Reilly,
Put
wear
your
a
helmet
visor.
on. Wear a visor. You got cut. We saw blood. We don't need to see that. Just
Yes.
safety first, gentlemen. Safety
Yes.
first. I do want to share a really cool story from one of our insiders who actually was so an insider and knew something was cooking with Zachary L'Heureux, maybe before a lot of the rest of us did. So this insider was messaging with us and said, went up to Milwaukee for the Admirals home opener, which was this past weekend, and I got a puck from Zach. Then when I was going home the next day, I saw him on my flight home. It was a surreal experience. I just thought I'd share that. And I just want to say, maybe this insider is the good luck charm as well. Like, you have brought Zachary L'Heureux, whether you meant to or not, you have escorted him to Nashville and good things happen. So hats off for transitioning Zachary from the AHL to the NHL.
That's awesome.
I think that was great. I was like, and see, that's how you get insider information.
Yep.
Who is on my flight home from Milwaukee, and do I recognize them? So the Predators, of course, this is just the first win. And you've got to make sure you don't slide back into bad habits. On tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about what they need to be sure not to do as they move forward. They've got 2 games this weekend against Chicago and against Columbus. Got to build some momentum. So we're going to dive into those details, what we need to see from them going forward to keep this win streak, 1 game, going. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. Emma, before we sign off today, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find my work at Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We're going to be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.